Hello and welcome to another edition of the podcast. Hello, how are you today? I'm your host, Mitch Corbett, and today we have a great guest. His name is Ronald Hae. He is a comedian. He is also a teacher. He has a podcast called the Teacher Hotline, where parents and teachers can call into his show and ask him questions, and he'll try and do his best, along with his guests, to answer the questions said by the teachers and the parents. I gave it a listen a while back. It's very good. If you're a parent or a teacher and you're looking for a podcast for yourself, or maybe if you're a new parent and you're wondering about the trials and tribulations of being a teacher and putting your kid in school, I'd highly recommend giving it a listen. It is the Teacher Hotline, and his name is Ronald Hae. He is also a comedian. That's where I met him, and that's where I got to have him on a guest as a podcast. So we talk teaching, we talk comedy, we talk a lot about a lot of different things. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode with Ronald Hae. That brings us to our guest here, Ron Hae. I wasn't sure to say Ron Hae or Ron Hae, and I got mixed up.
You got it, man. You got it.
Comedian from Toronto, right?
Toronto, Mississauga, GTA, all the same.
So the first question I want to ask you is that you seem like a very smart young man. You have a career that takes intelligence. So why are you a comedian?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Because this field is like reserved for the idiots and the misfits, and you're not. But you're also
that's very nice of you. Very nice of you to imply that I'm a smart man. I guess I'm fooling a lot of people.
That's when you take the glasses off. Like, see, I'm not.
That's why I'm wearing the glasses right now, right? You take these off, you're like, oh.
Hey there.
The short answer is I was a big drama geek in high school. And, I took drama all the way from grade 10 to grade 12. I was part of all the school plays. I was fortunate enough to have a really good drama teacher. And theater was a big part of our high school's identity. And I was lucky enough to be part of that in the Sears Drama Festival in Ontario. We made it all the way pretty far. I don't even know how far, but really, really far. And I don't know, I just had a big passion for the stage. And honestly, stand-up wasn't even a thing that we even studied in high school, to be honest with you. Like, we did monologues, which I guess
feel like improv would be more suited for what you're describing.
Yeah, you're 100% right. We did a lot of improv. We did a lot of, two-person scenes and, big plays, even musicals. We did a lot of monologues, which I guess is the closest thing to stand-up. But even monologues, a lot of them weren't even funny.
Yeah, I'd love to hear all the high schoolers' comedy jokes in the monologue. That'd be such great material.
Right, but we didn't even write them. That was the thing, right? Like, they were all like taken out out of a book. But I loved it. I loved the stage. And I remember even in high school, after the fact, I applied to a theater program at U of T Scarborough. And there was like this theater/business program. And I thought, you know what, this is a great mix of me, perhaps getting a career in business, but then also dabbling in theater and to see where it would take me. But for those people who are listening and are thinking about applying to that program, the second you step onto U of T Scarborough's campus, you would immediately be like, all right, this program is not for me. It looks like a penitentiary. And I saw the campus like, this is not a place I want to spend the next 4 years of my life. So I ended up going to Western.
You didn't give them money before you went to the campus, right? Like,
no, I just auditioned. I auditioned. I showed up late to my audition. No way, man. I showed up late to my audition. They gave me the spot anyways, which I was surprised about. I thought I was done after I was being late. But no, I didn't want to go to U of T Scarborough. It was a dirty campus. So I ended up going to Western, which is absolutely stunning and beautiful. So I thought I'd pick it up at Western. So I joined the improv club. I joined, I think second year I was like a prop master for Western school play as well. So I was trying to stay involved. And to be honest with you, it didn't really lead anywhere. I didn't really do theater or stand-up after that. And it wasn't until, fast forward, I got my teaching job and I went for coffee with a former student of mine. And we started just having the same conversation that you and I are having now. And they were like, you know what, you should go to Second City and reignite your passion and see where it leads you. So I took a random class at Second City, took stand-up 1, fell in love with it. My teacher made me the headliner for our graduation show, and then someone came up to me. This guy actually named Leonard Chan. He's huge now in the Canadian comedy scene. He gave me like a business card that said, "Hey, come by this club called 120 Diner. We have a show called Comedy Kapow. Love to have you on." Friday night, I went on stage, got a bunch of laughs, and I was like, you know what? I'm good at this. I gotta keep doing it, and stuck with it ever since.
So take me back to that first improv class at the Comedy Cellar. You said
At Comedy Kapow?
Comedy Kapow, and that
Oh
was in
yeah.
London. There's an improv
Oh no no no. So I guess are you
because
asking
you were
like
in
two?
Western, and that. So,
Yeah, the class I took. Sorry, I should say the class I took Second City was in Toronto when it was by like King
okay.
Street. But yeah, no,
Beside Wayne
the
Gretzky's,
Wayne
which is
Gretzky.
no
Yeah, yeah,
longer there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I took that class. Yeah, that was like a 6 week class. I did it with a friend, and honestly, like that was one of the best classes I ever took. It was just so fun, just so many laughs. Everyone was hilarious, and I actually still keep in touch with a lot of those people in the class today.
So how long after that do you start performing on a regular basis, but and not just open mics? Because you're right now you're a paid comedian, are you not? So you're
Yeah,
getting some
yeah,
gigs here and there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like talk about that that light bulb going off, like, oh, this is way more fun or improved version of improv or theater, or like how did that light bulb come off?
Honestly, like I think I started doing it consistently, like immediately. It wasn't like, all right, I did a show and then I waited 6 months later to do another show. Like I got bookings pretty quickly. And when I say bookings, I use that pretty lightly. Like, I would get some, bigger shows like on a Friday or whatever, Friday, Saturday. But I do a lot of open mics and I would hustle. And just like all new comics do, you just got to build a reputation in the scene. So I went to a lot of open mics. And what most people don't realize starting out is there's a lot of crossover with business and comedy. Like, there's a lot of networking out the gate, a lot more networking that I care for, to be honest with you. You got to meet producers, shake hands, talk to comedians, add people on Facebook, and just get to know people. And then those producers put you on their shows. Like heck, like even you, like I met you like maybe 2 months ago. Like I did your show once. You had no idea who I was, and now all of a sudden I'm on your podcast. Like there's just a lot of that in comedy that I didn't realize up front, and it was hard to get on bigger shows because I just didn't know anyone and people didn't know me.
Now this is going to sound very strange, very weird, but do you feel like you're being an Asian comedian helped you get more bookings because you were more diverse or anything like that?
No, I don't think so. Like I don't think it was that big of a thing. Like I started, by the way, for context, 4 years ago.
Mm.
Even 4 years ago, I don't think, to be honest with you, the shows I was getting on, at least, people were like, "Oh, we better get an Asian comedian on." Like in Toronto, it's a pretty diverse
Yeah,
population. Like
yeah,
I
fair
didn't do a
enough.
lot of shows in, Hamilton or London. Yeah, it's a pretty diverse population to begin with. So I don't think people were trying to fill a quota by any means.
Okay. And so so you have so much material that you can use, like from the theater background to being a teacher. I'm sure like every day you could write a new 2-minute bit about life as a teacher.
I'm writing one right now as I speak, actually. So,
I mean, you see so many things happen in the short time that you've done comedy. Has there anything that's ever like stuck out to you as a joke that you really, really, really wanted to do, but for some reason it just couldn't translate?
oh man, there's so there's a lot. You should take a look at my notebook. There's a lot of stuff that hasn't translated or I had to throw in the garbage. Yeah, there's been a ton of jokes that I've given up on, but I haven't really thrown out. Like, I don't know about you, but I have a notebook online. It's a digital notebook where I keep all my jokes, and I don't think I've ever fully deleted anything. Like, I'm like, all right, this is just not going to work, but I leave it. And then, sometimes you kind of just go through the notebook and you're like, oh my God, I remember trying this joke. And I wonder if I can make it work this time around. Like, for instance, I got a great example. There was a joke that I tried maybe in my very first year in comedy. I think I even did it at your show at Fork River Brewing. This joke I did about breakups and how it's a lot like sports and how you want home field advantage. And I always thought back in the day that was just so funny. And I was going through a breakup at the time, and I thought like, all right, how can I make this whole idea of breakups and sports come together? And the whole idea of home field advantage always came in the back of my mind. And for some reason, I could just never get it to work on stage. I don't know why. It just wasn't funny.
I would tell you. So like I've had a few like sports related material that I want to use. It depends on the crowd. Like if some
Yeah.
people don't watch sports, they're not gonna have any. And like I'm finding a lot more people who don't watch sports nowadays, which is a
No, and you're
shame.
right. You're 100% right. Like I feel like it depends on the crowd, but I feel like a good crafted joke could still work on any crowd. And I turned this one joke finally where I was getting consistent laughter like night after night after night. And I don't know what I did. I think it was more of my performance. I rewrote the joke. To be honest with you, I don't know what I did to it, but I finally got to a point where I was scoring 9 out of 10. I would say out of 10 shows, I was getting 9 laughs each time. Um,
And
so
so
I'm happy I
like,
didn't throw it out.
and when like, does that with that background of improv, does that help you? Obviously, I mean, obviously it helps you, but does it help you when a joke fails more so than when it succeeds?
Oh, yeah. I think most comedians, you would hope that it succeeds the first, second time around. When it fails, I don't know. Like, you're right. I feel like in life, you generally speaking, you learn more from your failures than your successes. Like for instance, I'm running like a stock simulation game right now with my kids at school, and everyone thinks they're like Warren Buffett now because everyone's doing so well in this like stock simulation game. But I'm
Can
like,
I
no, you
borrow a
guys are not.
thousand dollars to go on Quest Trade, Mr. Hay, please?
Exactly. But they're all investing in like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and they're all up like 50%, and they all think they don't have anything to learn from, this point forward. But the kids that are failing right now, the kids that are like not doing well, I think those are the ones that are learning the most. And I think comedians, it's the same thing. When a joke doesn't work, it forces you to reflect on why did it not work and how can I make this work. Um, so yeah, no, I think I learned a lot more from some of my failures.
And did the in relation to improv though, like I know improv is a lot of like, so comedy is like you coming up with material and like saying that material and then interacting a little bit in between the jokes. With improv, it's like, oh, give me a suggestion, blah. It seems to be much more of an interactive experience with the crowd. Has that helped you when things kind of go awry on stage, that improv background?
I should clarify, like, I'm not an improv
No, I
comedian.
mean, but I mean, like you
If-
did I you know what I mean, like the whole stage background improv, like they all kind
Yeah,
of commingle together. Like you have
yeah.
that
I should also say, like, I
stage
was never
time.
good at it, which is why I moved to stand up in the first place, right? I
Okay.
think if I was good at it, I think I would have stuck with it. Like when I say experience, I use that very loosely. Like I did it in high school. Like I did 1 year of it at Western when I was like 19 years old. And honestly, like I'm not even just saying, like I was not good at it. Like I find that my brain just isn't as quick and witty enough to respond to, I guess, the suggestions that are thrown. And like totally respect, the folks that can do improv. In fact, I really respect the comedians that could do crowd work really, really well, because there's got to be an element of improv there. And I'm like, I don't know how you guys just respond to the audience and just shut them down or bring them up so quick, because I can't do it, which is why I don't like to do crowd work, to be honest with you. I feel like that's something I want to work on. I just love comedy and stand up particular because it's you go in with a formula, your jokes are written, everything's planned ahead of time, and you just hit them, boom, 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 joke after joke after joke, with the appearance that it's coming off at the top of my head.
I love how you said like everything's planned and then like you miss a step and you're like, fuck.
You're right.
And like there's so many times, I'm sure you've had the same experience, where you get up on stage, you have like, oh, I'm gonna say it this way with this connotation and like this punchline here, and then like you get up there and you see people's eyes for the first time, you're like, oh god. Everything kind
Yes,
of goes
you're
to
right. Especially with the lights. With the lights, if you're in like a high pressure setting with the lights and the crowd, and like, yeah, you're right. Like you want to say it a certain way, but it comes off a different way. So you're right. I think that's where I don't even know if improv is a big thing. Like for me, maybe being a teacher definitely helps. Like I'm constantly on my feet thinking, and I don't know, script memorize. You kind of just go off the top of your head.
So, which kind of brings me to a next question: is that like there are certain nights where everything goes well and everything's perfect, and you're like you love comedy. And then there's nights where like it was the shits, and you're like I never want to do it again. It's so, and like it all comes down to like headspace and like getting yourself into that proper headspace of wanting to perform, being able to perform, and all that fun stuff. Do you have like a pre-set routine that helps you get into the mode to tell jokes?
Yeah, I do. For me, I love doing my set at least a few times, maybe two times at most before my show. I don't like socializing before my show, to be honest with you, like in the green room or with other comics. Like I like to
Fuck
be
them, they're
zeroed
parasites.
in. Yeah. I like to be zeroed in before I go up. I don't want to talk to anyone. In fact, I don't even drink. People buy me drinks all the time, and I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, I don't want
Save for
anything.
after. Yeah.
Save it for after. Exactly. Right. Like, I had a Coors Light once, and I forgot all my lines. I was like, oh my God, like, I'm hammered.
I'd smoked a joint once before a set, and just everything went away.
Oh, yeah,
It was
absolutely.
like
Right.
2 minutes. I was like, I'm done. I can't tell you guys anything else.
I
I am
can't do this.
freaking out.
I don't know how people do it. Like I get it. Like I guess some people like it eases their anxiety a little bit on
Yeah.
stage. But for me, like I'm like, no, I need to be on top of my game, full mental awareness. So I don't like to drink. I don't like to smoke. I don't do any of that. I like to go over my set a few times. And then to be honest with you, I just like to just sit in a corner and do my own thing, to be honest
No,
with
it's a
you.
good thing your name is not Baby, so they wouldn't put you in the corner. Don't be scared.
Yeah. But that's really my routine. And like honestly, I can't even like eat before a show. Like I should say big shows. Like I just get, I don't know,
Now, so like,
butterflies.
are these all things that you just learned over the past 4 years, or was it always like that? Like, how did you discover like, oh, I need my space before a show? Because, like you said before, like a lot of when you get into comedy is socializing, is shaking hands, kissing babies,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
No, you make a good point. I feel like I realized this probably very early on in like high school. Like I remember, um, I was the valedictorian for my high school, and
Nerd. No, I
I
go.
know the nerd. And I had to do like this big speech in front of the entire school. And I remember on the day of graduation where I had to like deliver the speech, like I just like left my house. Like I went into a park with my notes and I just sat there in the middle of a soccer field, just like talking over the lines by myself. I didn't want to talk to my mom, my dad, my friends. Even on the day of graduation, where it was like, everyone's hugging each other. I was like, just like, stay the hell away from me. Like, I got a job to do today. Let's hug and kiss after, after I do this thing. And I remember I couldn't eat before either. Like, I don't know, like, you just get these like butterflies in your stomach and food just won't go down. So I think I learned that on an early age, and it's just kind of been a habit now since going to comedy.
And now that you're in comedy, now you mentioned that you're a valedictorian, you're a teacher. So again, why are you a comedian? Ask these simple questions. But as a valedictorian, as a teacher, you probably have to do a lot of studying. Now, books are probably way different than comedy. What do you look for when you're studying and watching comedy? Like, how in depth do you go when you're watching comedian on, what works on stage, sort of thing?
Yeah, like it's funny. I don't know if every comic is like that, but I find that now when I watch comedy for leisure, I
It's hard,
definitely
right?
see it through a different lens. It's like I'm assuming it's like the same for magicians, right? You kind of watch another magician pull a rabbit out of their hat, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I see what they did there. Not bad, not bad." Like I see the sleight of hand or whatnot. You're not as impressed, but at the same time, not to say that when I watch other comedians, it's not that I'm impressed. Like I almost see their moves. I'm like, "Oh, okay, like, that worked because of they did this, this, and that," and you still laugh, but I feel like I have a further appreciation for what comics are doing on stage because you see the magic that they're creating on stage.
Mm.
And I note that in the back of my head. Um, and there's other things that comics will do, like that I can't do, like impressions. I'm not an impressionist on stage. I don't do accents on stage. Um, and I have a greater appreciation. I'm like, man, like I would love to do that, but I can't. And I love how you're able to pull that off. or I'm like, oh, I love how you're able to tell that dirty dick joke. I find it hilarious, but that's not my style. Like I can't pull that off. So I feel like I appreciate other styles more now than I did perhaps in the past.
Do you have like any like go-to comedians that you go out of your way to watch for enjoyment or for studying?
Like, are you talking like pro comedians like on TV, or are you like local comedians in the scene?
Well, either or.
In terms of like pro comedians that are like, nationally televised, like I'm a big fan of Mark Normand, Joe List, Nate Bargatze. Those are like absolutely, those three are my favorites. Like in fact, I
Mark
got
Norman
Mark.
is one that's really catching my eye right now as well. Like I'm like, oh man, he is super, super good.
Dude, he's coming to Toronto. I think on the 17th, 18th, 19th. I got tickets to see him in Toronto. They're still
Where?
selling. It's in, I think, Massey Hall. But if you
So they picked
check it
him
out,
over. They picked him over Andrew Schultz. Is that what's
yeah, I heard about
happening?
Andrew Schultz. How about how they banned him over there? I think it's
If they
Massey Hall.
if
Don't
they
quote
if
me.
they think Mark Norman doesn't going to say anything appropriate, oh my god, this is very interesting.
I know. I heard about the Andrew Schultz drama there, but don't quote me on Massey Hall. But he's coming to Toronto on the 19th. I'm so excited to see him. I had him. I
Is
saw him
that
in
December or
Buffalo,
January? Sorry,
December, like in a couple
December.
weeks. There's
Oh
still
shit.
tickets left, I think.
Yeah, won't be able to. I already got tickets for Segura in London coming in February.
Oh,
That's what I'm
right,
really looking forward to.
right.
I'm glad everyone's
Yeah.
coming back. How about locally? Because like, all right, so the other day we had a show in St. Thomas, and a guy walks into the bar, and he looks homeless, and he looks like he's here like the regular, and then he performs. Harry Kiwi performs live on stage in front of my eyes. And he's one of the funniest comedians I've ever seen in my life.
That's amazing.
And so like I'd never seen or heard of him before in my life. So who are some of the ones locally that you really like are enjoying now?
Oh, there's so many local comedians in. Like I bounce between Toronto and Hamilton because I live in Mississauga. It's kind of nice. I get to do both
Yeah,
scenes.
you're
Whereas I
like in a
think,
prime spot with that location, to be honest.
yeah, it's nice and I have a car too, so I can kind of drive to both and it's equal distance. Whereas I think, if you're from Hamilton, you're not gonna drive to Toronto and vice versa.
No, you
So
take the
I
GO train.
Yeah, and it's kind of a pain in the butt in the winter if you're taking transit. So I feel fortunate to kind of see both scenes. Like in the Hamilton scene, like there's just so many like top-notch quality comics, and they've really embraced me there, which has been so nice. Obviously, everyone knows Manolis. He's fantastic. I see him all the time. He's hilarious.
Who is this?
Mike,
I don't actually know him.
oh, he's
I'm
great.
still
He's
kind
he,
of relatively new in the area, but like I want to eventually be able to get
Oh,
know.
Manolis is fantastic. He's absolutely huge. Michael Moses is another comedian that's
He's
absolutely
fantastic. I've seen him.
he's
Yeah,
incredible. I know Jason Allen and everyone in London knows very, very well. Eric Johnson is hilarious from Hamilton. So that's like, those are like some big names in Hamilton. They're absolutely killer. Uh, th-
is there a difference? So like you're bouncing around. You're in Mississauga, which is half an hour away, in between London or Hamilton and Toronto. Is there a difference between the London Ontario or the Hamilton and Toronto scenes?
that's a good question. I find that the Hamilton scene is similar to London in the sense that it's very close knit. I feel like everyone knows everyone and everyone is just very supportive of that community. It's just because I think by nature just smaller, so I think everyone just knows everyone. Whereas I think Toronto, there's just so many comics that like I'll be honest with you, like there are names out there that I know of, but there are people that I just haven't even really gotten a chance to speak to yet after 4 or 5 years. Or comics that you've heard of but you haven't bumped into yet at a show. And I think it's also because Toronto's just so big. There's shows up north, downtown, on the east end, on the west end. Um, it's just a little bit more broken up. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I feel like Toronto is just a larger scene, and it's harder to I don't know get close with a lot of people. I don't know. I don't feel like I have a clique right
Is
now in
there? Do you
Toronto.
feel like there is that sort of like barrier where like so like I'm? Do you listen to Rogan at all?
Yeah, I listen to Rogan.
Do you ever hear like them share stories about the old comedy store where like the comedians would always like bump other comedians down? have you ever seen that happen in the Toronto area where like, is there like an upper echelon that's keeping the next group from getting up and so forth? Or
Yeah, like in terms of like levels, like I think there's implied levels in comedy. Like no one ever says it like, "Oh, I'm above you," or "I'm below you," or like "I'm in level 2 and you're level 3." Like I don't think that's a thing. But I think everyone knows where you are in the pecking order. Or at least I feel like I'm self-aware to know where I am relative to other comics. Whether it's just, my ability to write, perform, accolades. And as a result, there's just certain shows you just know you just can't get on, right? You kind of look at the names, you're like, all right, like I'm not getting on that show because, the producer won't see me in that light. Like I'm not on the same level as X, Y, and Z. And I'm okay with that. Like, everyone just should be self-aware of where you kind of rank in the pecking order. And I feel like that fuels me to kind of write harder, go out more, network with more comics, and get my name out there. Because, yeah, just like everything else in life, it doesn't come easy. You got to work for it. And I don't know. I'm okay with putting the work in. And, that's just the name of the game.
and like you're putting the work in the game, and now you kind of mentioned how you know that you're at this certain level. Like how do you, a lot of the discussions I have on this podcast are like knowing your own worth, discussing like how you get proper payment for what your art is, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like you can look at someone who's an artist and like they may not be like, they may not draw what you want them to draw, but they're still successful. So like, when did you kind of get that clicking in your head that like, oh no, I should ask for this much, or I'm at this level, sort of thing? Where does that confidence come from, or when did it come from?
Yeah, honestly, I think I'm still working on that. Like, I don't know if I'm still fully there yet, if I'm being frankly honest. Like, I think to your point earlier, what you were saying before about, how sometimes there are days where you're like, oh man, like I'm a piece of shit, I suck. And then there's other days where you're on top of the world. And I think it just comes in waves. And I'll be honest, like, I think just like a lot of people or even comics, I think sometimes that there is this what's that word I'm looking for?
Loathing.
Imposter syndrome.
Okay.
And yeah, you have this imposter syndrome where you're like, maybe I'm not good enough. Like maybe I can't believe someone's putting me on this show. And those are days where it's really, really tough to, I don't know, really, I don't know what the word is, but just be genuine about like, you know what, I am good at this. Because yeah, like it just takes one bad show, right? Like, it just takes one bad show for you to just wipe out any of that confidence. And it takes a lot of self-discipline and time for you to tell yourself that like it's not one show. It's, it happens to everybody. And I feel like after the pandemic, I did a lot of self-work on myself with telling me that I am good enough to be around, all of these comics. And I am just as good as a lot of these comics in the Toronto scene, Hamilton scene. But, it's a lot of, self-work there. And it takes a lot of work.
So what did you do to get that self work? I mean, a lot of people had a lot of time during the pandemic to kind of like sort that shit out, and I feel like a lot of people did. I feel like a lot of people probably didn't as well. So how did you work on that?
Yeah, like I think in terms of comedy, I just didn't give up, first of all. Like I remember the first, I don't know, month and a half, maybe even 2 months. I swear to God, I'm not lying. There was a point where I'm like, all right, maybe I should just stop this. Like maybe the pandemic happened for a reason and this is just not for me. And I remember the first 2 months were just god awful. I don't know if it was rust. I don't know if my jokes from the past just didn't, come off the same way. Maybe my new jokes just weren't great. But I was just like so in my head that I was not good at this ever to begin with. And I was just living in fantasy land before. But I don't know, at some point it just clicked and I just did a couple of good shows, high quality shows. Like I did your show at Fork River Brewing and that went really, really well. You asked me to come back and I didn't even tell you this, man. You even asked me to come back was like, a big confidence boost for me. I'm like, oh man, like people like me here.
They like me. They really like me.
They really like me. Pat Tiffin reached out to me from the London community. He asked me to headline at the Rec Room next week. I was on another show called Headliners of Tomorrow. And I was just doing like just higher quality shows. And I felt like that helped because, having a well-produced show makes a big difference. And you produce a great show in there in London at that brewery. Whereas I think when I started, I was doing a lot of just like open mic bar shows with like 5 people, and that didn't really help my confidence, to be honest with you.
So you and so like you mentioned the Forked River Brewery show, which I'm glad you enjoyed coming out. The reason why I do that show is because it's such a unique venue. You've had the chance now to go to Hamilton, Toronto, a few other places. What's been the weirdest venue that you've ever performed at?
Weirdest venue, eh? Oh man, I don't know. That's a really, really good question. All the London rooms have been great. I've been on. The Hamilton rooms have been good. Um, I did.
A birthday party? You're gonna say birthday party.
No, no, I've actually never done I would say weird shows. Like I feel like every show, again, this is maybe me being glass half full type of thinker, but I feel like every show has the possibility for a good memory or a good experience. There's some sort of learning takeaway, which might sound cheesy. So because I'm thinking, I'm like, no, like I don't know, like I've done like odd rooms, but like they're open mics and they're meant to be odd. Um, but I don't know, like I've done some cool shows where I'm like, all right, like I wouldn't have expected comedy here, but it turned out to be a good experience. Like I did a friend's Chinese New Year show in their condo, and I wasn't even expecting to do comedy. Like they had a karaoke machine all set
I
up.
was gonna say karaoke, but
Yeah, they had a karaoke machine set up, and they're like, "Ron, like you got to do comedy." And I didn't want to. I'm like, "No, I'm not doing comedy for you guys. Like this is ridiculous." And then eventually I got peer pressured into it, and I did a show for I don't know 15, 20 people, and it was on the spot, and it was fantastic. Everyone laughed. I had a good time, and I'm glad I did it. So those are the odd shows like that that.
I think like with comedy, specifically with comedy, and like my background, professional wrestling, like you have to embrace the weirdness of life and like these situations we are like voluntarily going up on stage and trying to make people laugh is one of the weirdest, strangest, most complicated things that people who never do it will never understand how weird it is.
It is. It really is. It's like when someone says, "Oh, a funny guy, like tell me a joke," and I'm like, "No, like that's not how it works." No,
Like I do
like it's
have
a perform.
I always have one joke in my back pocket for that situation, and that's
Yeah,
it. And I will never tell it again.
really. I want to know what this joke is now.
Okay, so when I was young, my girlfriend and I decided to have sex for the first time, and we just couldn't find a spot. Fortunately, my parents had the keys to the curling club in the summertime, so I lost my virginity in the curling club. I tried to go hard, but all I did was hurry.
That's good. I feel like I need a joke like that. Just something like out of my back pocket.
Yeah,
Um,
that was
but
actually that's actually the first joke I ever actually wrote, like for anything. Was that
really,
one? And I still use it because like I just
I'll
think
say
it's
I
funny.
never heard you do it on stage.
Well, when you're hosting, like, so when I'm hosting a show, and like a lot of people are like, "Oh, you gotta get your shit in," blah blah. I'm like, no, I'm like, it's Friday night. I want people to come in, enjoy themselves. I want everyone to be able to get home on time because
True.
everyone's so I'm always like, I'm not trying to like add another 10 minutes here or 5 minutes here. I'm trying to
Right.
rotate people. So I'll do my 5 minutes or intro thing and then just keep the show moving as fast as I can, sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I feel like a lot of people don't know how to host, and no, you do a great job. And that's one thing I don't like doing. I don't know why. I'm not a host.
Well, I think it's so that's another thing with the Forked River shows, right? Is I usually like I'll do my shows, but then I'll let someone else book a show, and if they're booking it, that means they have to host it, and just it gives them an additional like appreciation for the art form, or it gives them a new skill to kind of work on, I think. And so like
Yeah.
I want everyone to be able to like be able to host, be able to be a comedian. Like I'm always going to let people try and do weird things. Like we've had,
Yeah.
like with the story we just had about the comedian that got kicked out, like or like he's got banned, but like I gave him an opportunity, free speech and everything. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's not my decision. But like then
Yeah.
there's like we had a comedian. You you were there when the chick came up with the fucking paper towels.
Oh my god. Oh my. I don't know what the hell was going on
I
over
left
there.
to get a cigarette, and I was like, "What is happening? Like, I don't
What
even know."
is going?
I have it
I don't know what was
recorded on
going on.
tape, so I don't know if I should ever go back and watch it again. But it was I was just watching her saunter up with like a mask on and paper towels around her entire body.
I had to go on after that, actually.
You did. You brought the show back to reality shortly
Oh
after
man,
that.
I was nervous, man. I was like, "What is happening right
See,
now?" I'm
that
like,
can be your story of like the weirdest moment you've ever had.
yeah, no,
Trying
that
to
was pretty
follow
weird.
that.
That's a tough act to follow. So who was I having this conversation with? I feel like following either someone asked me, would you rather follow a really, really bad act or a really, really good act? And I actually had a hard time answering that. I don't know about you. What do you think? Like, what would you
Good,
rather
always
follow?
good.
Always good?
Because then the moment that should be easy momentum to like start off with a joke that you know works and then carry that momentum over. Where if it's
That's
bad, the
true.
crowd's already dead, and then you had to work that extra little bit to like bring him back to the point where you have a successful show.
I don't I guess it makes more sense to follow someone that's really, really good. But I feel like in the past, I I feel like I've always done better following someone that just absolutely bombed on stage. Where I feel like, oh, like I can bring this back. I'm like, I would rather try to bring this back than follow someone where I'm like, I just can't follow that. Like the energy is not like, I mean, like you've seen me a couple times now. Like I'm not super high energy where I'm like jumping off the walls, where I find it very intimidating where someone is just destroying and the room is just going crazy. And you're like, there's no way my energy level can pass that. Anything I do is just not as good. And that's happened before. And I'm like, damn, like, and that's what I'm talking about level sometimes, right? Like you go see someone go up above you and you're like, man, I know this guy is way better than me, but I'm gonna try my best to try to outdo him. And sometimes you just fall short.
And those are all the pitfalls of like performing, and it's not just comedy. It's professional wrestling, acting, theater acting,
Yeah.
being a musician. I mean, like anytime you have like a art form like that where you're putting yourself out there, it's an extremely difficult thing to do. Especially, I mean, imagine with a band, it's a lot easier because you just hit one good guitar riff to get everyone back on board.
Right.
With theater, I mean, everything's scripted, so I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
hard. But with
Yeah.
specifically comedy, it's like I want everyone to succeed. I just want
Yeah.
everyone to do well. I want everyone to have a good set, have a good time, because then it makes the show a good time.
Yeah.
Like I watched Kill Tony with Tony Hinchcliffe, and I always feel bad when the guys or girls just bomb so poorly.
Mm,
And I guess it's
right.
part of the show and the gimmick and everything, but I much prefer when there's a good show, Kill Tony, when it's all comedians and they're all knocking it out of the park, because then that energy translates and makes me
Oh
feel
yeah.
good afterwards too.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like this is where having a good producer is really, really key. Like, especially if the producer knows every comic or seen every comic, kind of just know the order of like, all right, like we're gonna put this person first because they bring in high energy, and then the second comic's gonna complement this first comic really, really well. Like, I feel like there is an art to kind of
So
staggering
in
how you put the show together.
so in relation to that, that is exactly what happens. The same with like a wrestling card, right? You like so
Yes.
for professional wrestling, there's the main event and there's the first match and matches in between. So
Right.
ideally, you want to start your first show with like a really really good match to get everyone invested, or a good
Right.
comedian get everyone invested.
Right.
And you do like maybe a newer like a rookie match, and then you do like a veteran match title, and you build up to that
Right.
big crescendo where you have the big person.
Right.
I'm still new at producing the shows, and I'm kind of figuring out how to do it. I mean, last Friday is a lesson learned for me personally in terms of
Yeah.
who to book, what to book, maybe do a
Yeah.
little bit more research before I bring them in, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the idea is to just, and that's what I hate sometimes about being in this art form, is that when you see the people that are like just negative Nancy's and like they're doing it, but they're not doing it with the art form being the main goal. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you clarify first. Like, what do you mean? Because I feel like I might be interpreting that a little bit differently.
Well, so like some people do it like get to a certain level and then they just do they're doing it for paid gigs and it's paid gigs and it's paid gigs and it's paid gigs. And then like they're not doing anything new. They're doing
Right.
it just to, get out and sort of thing. I've always thought that the most happiness you can have while performing is doing it for the love of the arts
Oh,
instead of the money.
100%.
The
Yeah.
monetary stuff will eventually hopefully come. But if it doesn't, you can always say you did it for the art, and it's just a fun thing to do. Like when you do have a successful set, I don't think there's any better high. To be
Yeah,
honest.
100%. No, 100%. I will say, I feel like there are different levels to that. Like, I feel like there's obviously the comedians that do it for a living. And like, I get it. Like, they depend on the money and the income that rolls in and all that stuff. But I feel like for most comics, including myself, like, I don't do it for the money, right? Like, it's really nice when someone pays you and recognizes you financially for the work that you put in. And that's great. But yeah, by no means like am I doing this for money, which is why I still have my full-time job. You do it for the art and you do it for the love of comedy.
And like you can do it for both too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can do it for the art and make money at the same time. And eventually, though, that path will cross for you, where like maybe it is becoming so good that you can quit the day job, or maybe you want to keep the day job and still just make money at the same time. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's tough, right? Like that would be, I think, a huge blessing if I ever got to that point where I had to make such a big decision like that. And I feel like I'm still light years away from that because I see some of the big comedians here in the GTA area and like, they put in years and years and years, and I've seen some of them quit their full-time job. And kudos to them. Like they totally deserve it. But again, like it's not easy. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like if I got to the point where I was doing comedy for a living, like as a job where my income depended on it, I feel like I again would look at comedy through a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, there's no pressure. Like, right, if I don't book a gig, if I don't write a new joke, like it's not the end of the world. But I feel like if I did it for a living, I don't know. I feel like there's extra pressure now on you to deliver, right?
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I guess never thought of it that way. Yeah, I still, because I guess I look at like people like Tom Segura or Andrew Schultz, and they release stuff online, free content all the time, right? And like some of it is like from their crowd shows they're paid and everything. It's just fuck, that's weird. Yeah, would it take the comedy? Would it make comedy too serious that you don't enjoy them?
Yeah, and I'm sure it would for some people, and for other people, it might not change anything in terms of how they view it. That's just something I assume would happen. I could be totally wrong. Yeah, because I got a mortgage to pay, and what does that mean? That means I got to get paid. How do I get paid? I got to get bookings. So I don't know. I feel like it would probably put a different lens through comedy.
Yeah, and then in that case, it's probably like you're like, God, I hope an agency picks me up so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, you're right. I feel like once you do get to that level, and I know a lot of big comics in Toronto do, like they have agents now that book them shows and whatnot.
Yeah, I saw Jason Allen just got his, so congrats to him. That's
yeah,
awesome.
Jason Allen got something. I saw Sophie Buttle in, I don't know if you know her, in the Hamilton.
Sorry, did you say Buttle?
Yeah, did I say that name wrong?
I thought you said Stacy Butthole. Sorry,
oh,
that's my immaturity.
Oh,
acting up right there.
No, Sophie Buttle. She's a big comic. I'm pretty sure she won a Grammy for one of her albums, but she's like a local comedian. She was just on the late night show, so I'm sure she definitely had an agent to help her, obviously book some of that stuff. So I'm sure once you get to a certain level, like you got people helping you.
Like, do you ever think that much forward with your comedy career? Like, do you ever think like, oh man, that'd be cool? Or do you are you just kind of like riding the wave that you're doing right now?
Yes and no. Like I think yes, in the sense that you always dream about like, oh, I wonder, what would it be like if I, did this and that. But then one of the best pieces of advice I got from Nate Bargatze, one of the comics I really look up to. I saw him do an interview, and he was talking about how it's so important in comedy to just set just achievable goals. Just always have a comic that's one level above you and one level below you. The one above you, that way who to chase after. You're like, all right, this person is getting these gigs. They're only an arm's reach away from me. We were on the same show. I can do what that person is doing. Whereas the one person below you, you feel like, you're like, all right, I just leveled up. I can pass some of this knowledge down, and they're kind of eating it up. And you could see that you're progressing. If you kind of are chasing this dream of like, all right, I'm going to be Jerry Seinfeld one day, it's just not a realistic goal. And you're just going to be set up for failure in terms of just staying motivated and staying confident. So yes, you kind of dream about some of those big accolades, but you can't dream too far ahead because, that could be 20 years from now, right?
Well, this podcast has been a dream, Ron. Thank you so much for look at that fucking segue. Oh my
Look
god,
at that
so
segue.
good.
I love it.
It's a Sunday afternoon. I've taken up enough of your time. You enjoy the rest of your weekend, my friend. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Where can people find you on the social medias?
Yeah, so my regular Instagram page, I got at Ronald Hae on Instagram, at Twitter, on Facebook. I've also run my own podcast as well called the Teacher Hotline that you can hear every single Monday. You can follow that on Instagram as well at the Teacher Hotline. So
and
check
it's
it out.
Ronald Hae, RONALDHAE for those social medias there. Ron, thanks again for being on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode with Ron. He's a great dude, great comedian, and the sky's the limit for him. Again, you can find him on all his social medias. I do believe just at Ronald Hae, RONALDHAE, on the Twitters, Instagrams, everything. But of course, you can always check those out below in the bio. That's it for me this week, and that's it for me for the rest of the year. We're gonna take a break on the podcast until January, just because it's too busy. Christmas time, holiday time, whatever you want to call it. It's an extremely busy period for both myself and for all the people I want to get on the podcast. So I would like to avoid any stress for them, any stress for myself, and take a break. So we'll see you guys in the new year. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys in 2022 with a brand new assortment of guests. Cheers.